Hello and welcome to another Versus video. I'm Todd Anderson, joined today by
Braun-Duin, and I am cuckoo for abs and Cocoa Puffs.
That's all right, cool. Well, so we're doing a deck tech today. Brian is going to be playing a Collected Company deck with the Abzan colors. Go ahead and take it away.
All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at this deck. I am playing a version of a deck that actually won a Premier IQ in one of the recent opens. I can't remember where, but basically it is based around the combination of Collected Company and Court of Calling, along with the what was previously known as the Malira combo.
Yeah.
Now can be potentially known as the Anafenza combo as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see. Even now, there are cards being printed that have not even the same abilities as older ones, but still kind of do the same thing.
Yeah, Malira and Anafenza are basically able to do essentially the same kind of thing when you combo them with Kitchen Finks, Murderous Redcap, along with a sacrifice outlet like Viscera Seer. So the way it works is if you have Malira in play, Kitchen Finks and Murderous Redcap can't come back with +1/+1 or -1/-1 counters on them.
Says so right here.
So they just keep coming back as normal, and you can keep sacrificing them over and over again. Kitchen Finks gains you infinite life. Murderous Redcap deals infinite chunks of 2 damage.
Yep.
And then if you have Anafenza, it's essentially the same thing except there's one additional step where you get to bolster 1. And since their creatures come into play as X1s with the persist, they're always going to be the smallest creature that you can bolster onto.
Or at least tied. And in the case of a tie with bolster, you get to choose. So.
Yeah, so generally speaking, I will choose one of those 2 creatures.
Yeah, that seems reasonable.
Yeah, it's certainly a reasonable play. One thing to note with Redcap, probably not that relevant in a tournament, but certainly relevant on Magic Online when time is concerned. You want to stack the triggers so that you bolster onto the Redcap before it deals the damage.
Yeah, that way it does 2 instead of just 1.
Yep.
But yeah, oh, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, even beyond the combo aspect of the deck, which we have Collected Company, it finds all the pieces of the combo minus Redcap, and then Court as well finds whatever pieces we're missing. We actually just have a kind of a value engine of creatures that cost 3 or less to put in off a Collected Company that do sweet things or have cool abilities. So we have a couple of just random value creatures like a Scavenging Ooze, a Fiend Hunter, and a Spellskite that we can basically cord for when we need to kill a creature, or Spellskite's very good against decks like Twin or Boggles or things like that, where Infect, where you can just cord for a Spellskite and pretty much win the game on the spot. And then Ooze is just a phenomenal card by itself. But even beyond that, we have like some Voice of Resurgence, and one of the real key cards of the deck is Eternal Witness.
Oh yeah, I can foresee these games against super grindy black-green decks where you just continually cast Court of Calling, find Eternal Witness, untap, do it again, and with just a single Court of Calling, you end up with like 2 to 4 Eternal Witnesses in play, and it costs you no cards. It costs you time, but not cards, and cards is the more important thing when your opponent's casting things like Thoughtseize.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, you can just cord for 3 to get Eternal Witness to rebuy the cord. You can also Collected Company into an Eternal Witness to rebuy the Collected Company.
Yeah, that's great.
So there's a lot of like sweet recursion with Eternal Witness. And then we have a couple of bigger creatures like Shriekmaw and Murderous Redcap. Redcap completes the combo, and then Shriekmaw is just a very powerful creature and serves as like a 3rd piece of cheap removal along with Abrupt Decay, but we can also cord for it if we need to. And it also triggers Anafenza when you evoke it, so it's actually kind of cool too.
Yeah, it's sweet. The one thing that I'm curious about is Wall of Roots versus Noble Hierarch, and I know that Wall of Roots is a really good defensive creature which can buy you some time against like really aggressive decks with like Monastery Swiftspear, stuff like that. But it's also pretty ridiculous with Court of Calling because it effectively adds 2 mana since it adds mana without actually having to tap. But Noble Hierarch being able to let things like Kitchen Finks or Voice of Resurgence start attacking for an extra point might be more relevant. I know that the old versions of Birthing Pod trimmed down a lot on Wall of Roots, usually just down to 1, and played like 3 to 4 Noble Hierarchs, depending on how many mana creatures they want to play. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see which one could be better.
Yeah, like I've definitely been waffling between the 2 of them a bunch. I've had Noble Hierarchs and Walls, or just Hierarchs, or just Walls. I've tried a bunch of things, and I'm not 100% sure what's better. However, I will say that one of the big differences is in Pod, you're premier card costs 3 mana, so having a 1 mana dork was really great because you could go Hierarch into Birthing Pod, but here our best card is 4. So having a 2 mana guy into Collected Company is basically the same thing. It's just better for Cord later on.
Yep, that's a really great point. I would maybe try to find room for a third Gavany Township. I feel like this deck might struggle with Flood. If you don't draw like a Court of Calling or a Collected Company very early, you're just going to draw a bunch of these like dinky dorks. And one of the biggest fears of mine when I was playing against Birthing Pod was them drawing a Gavany Township when they had that draw.
Yeah.
It was like the double-edged sword. Either they drew Gavany Township or they drew Birthing Pod or Court of Calling or whatever. So
yeah, having access to Township really provides another dimension to decks like this as well, like Todd said, where sometimes, you don't draw a Court or a Collected Company or they Thoughtseize you, but you just Township them anyway. And it's also really good with the Persist creatures too. You can reset them with Gavany Township, which is... you can reset them with Anafenza, but you can also do it with Gavany Township. And I've even seen situations where like you have a red cap in play that has a counter on it. And generally speaking, with old pod decks, you couldn't reuse that red cap. It was basically out of the game.
Yeah.
But you can do something like, if you have red cap with 1 counter on it, you can play Anafenza, then you can Cord for Viscera Seer to
put a counter on it,
bolster onto the red cap, and now you have a fresh red cap that you can use to kill them.
Oh, that's great.
So there's a lot of pretty sweet things that you can do with Anafenza and the deck in general.
So last thing before we get to the sideboard, just want to point out that with a deck that features Court of Calling, the possibilities are limitless, Like, there's so many creatures in the format. Like, we could maybe even want, like, a Revelark, a Restoration Angel. We could just want, like, almost the exact same package that the old Birthing Pod decks used to play, But, it is important to note that since we're not chaining, it's less relevant that we have creatures that go up the curve. Like, we don't have any 4 drops besides Red Cap, because there's no need.
Yeah.
We don't have any 5 drops besides Shriek Maw because, there's no need. We want our cards to be cheap so the Court is good, et cetera, et cetera. But... if you decide to pick this deck up and actually give it a try, I think there's a lot of customization possible.
Yeah.
And it really just depends on, what you think you're going to play against, what you think you'll need with your toolbox package.
Yeah, and I've actually played a variety of cards too. Like, I've tried Revelark. I had Mirror Entity in here for a while.
Ooh, that sounds sweet.
When it was good, it was good. And I even tried Sappy Eric's Daughter at one point, and let's just say Eric's not too proud. But anyway, let's go ahead and look at the sideboard and see what we have there. All right, so we are back with the sideboard, and as you can tell, there are a lot of one-ofs. In fact, there are 7 one-of creatures in our sideboard. And also, there's not a whole lot of spells. We only have 5 spells, and the reason for that is because I want to maintain being a Court of Calling Collected Company deck post-board, and if you bring in too many spells, it really dilutes those cards significantly. So I do have 2 Path to Exiles as removal spells and 3 Thoughtseize for matchups where these cards are needed. And I wanted these cards to be the cheapest spells available, so they're all 1 mana, because a lot of times we can turn into these like Thoughtseize, Path to Exile, Eternal Witness decks and matchups where we're just like, Path your guy, Witness my path, Path your guy, or like Thoughtseize you, Witness, Thoughtseize you, and just really hammer it home against those kinds of decks. So that's why I wanted those cheap spells, but beyond that, we're just all creatures.
Yeah, I think it's important in decks with like Collected Company and Court of Calling and previously Birthing Pod to have a lot of creatures that would do things that non-creature spells would normally do.
Exactly.
Like, we don't want like Drown in Sorrow or something like that because we have access to Orzhov Pontiff. We don't want a ton of discard spells because we have access to Sin Collectors. So
yeah, and having access to Eternal Witnesses in your deck also lets these cards be more than one sometimes too, where you can play, you find your Reclamation stage with a Court of Calling, kill their guy, you can stack it to a Viscera Seer, witness it back, kill another guy. Like, we're not limited to just one of these kinds of effects, with the exception of Pontiff, generally speaking, because of the Haunt ability where it exiles itself.
Yeah, you can counter the Haunt ability, but like by sacrificing the thing it targets, but that's whatever.
Yeah, that doesn't happen that often. And then the only exception to our one-of here is we have 3 core Firewalkers for like Mono Red and Burn, which is a reasonably popular deck in Modern, and playing this card on turn 2 is almost impossible to lose the game after you do that.
Yep.
So it's just a really powerful card. Plus you can collect a company into it, which is pretty sweet.
Game.
Yeah. And then we have a second Spellskite, which most decks don't play additional Spellskites, but It's just so good in the matches where it's good that I wanted access to more.
Yeah.
Mind Sensor is a card I actually haven't tested with yet, but Court of Calling has become more and more popular. I've started to play against the Mirror Match, and I've also started to play against this Elf deck that's playing Collected Company
Yeah,
Court.
I've seen that too.
That's becoming really popular, so I think having access to this is fine. And then, yeah, Big Game Hunter is just big game.
Yeah, is tick up. I'm really hoping you board in against me, so I tick up Liliana, and you put it into play and kill my Tarmogoyf.
Yeah, that would just be a delight. So.
Yeah. I will say the Mind Sensor also shines against Primeval Titan Amulet decks if you can get into play quickly enough. That can be difficult sometimes because their deck is relatively fast, but if you have a little bit of disruption with Thoughtseize or you draw an Abrupt Decay to kill their Amulet to slow them down for a turn, Mind Sensor can just shut them out of the game. So.
And I also want to say, if you've ever played against the Amulet deck before too, if you do Mind Sensor them and when they play a Primeval Titan, they're going to find Slayer Stronghold and Boros Garrison in their top 4 cards anyway.
They always do.
Yeah, that's just how it works, but maybe they'll get unlucky. So. Yeah. But yeah, this is the Abzan Cuckoo deck, and pretty excited to battle it against Jund and see if it can match up to Jund. So, yeah.
Oh, excuse me. Sorry. So the list of Jund I'm going to be playing today is based on Jerry Thompson's PPTQ winning deck list from a Seattle tournament.
Yep.
Our Seattle PPTQ. There was 70 people, so a pretty reasonable sized modern tournament, and he loved it. You know, we talked about it a little bit this week, and I'm going to give it a try. We'll see if we can match up to Collected Company.
We'll see.